Hello everyone, my name is Maria Fernandez. I'm from Georgian College doing my program in police studies. So today we're gonna do my presentation. It's for community policing course. My presentation will talk about First Nation issues in Canada and residential school system. We're gonna be focused more on Indian residential school system and how does that work with the First Nation in Canada. Okay, so we're gonna start this presentation with 5 questions and we're gonna discuss everything, and we're gonna end this presentation on 5 questions as well, to get the main idea from this presentation. Anyway, simple start on this presentation. What are you gonna think when you hear First Nation and residential school system, and how does that work together? And let's get started to know what does that mean. Now we're gonna start with the first 5 questions, and the first one is, how do indigenous peoples preserve their culture today? Number 2, what is the impact of private schools on education in Canada? Number 3, how does police presence contribute to the preservation of indigenous culture? Number 4, what challenges do indigenous community face in preserving their traditional? Number 5, how do private schools impact social and economic opportunity in Canada? First, let's discuss what is the Indian Residential School Assignmental Agreement, IRSSA, is. Signed in 2006, it provides massive compensations to Indigenous victims of Canadian residential schools. The amount amounting to 1.9 billion Canadian dollars. The compensations was for abuse of Indigenous students, which caused psychological and mental terms and physical harm. The cause of the IRSSA was to financial compensate for the injustice. The IRSSA was administered through 2 programs. The first one, to Shared Experience Payment Program, CEP, which provide financial payment to residential school students, and the second one was Asylum Compensation Program, IAP, which mitigated the harm caused by physical and sexual abuse, as well as other payments to students. The IRSSA also faced that share some problems, including financial exploitations by lawyers, which illegal charge and residual amounting of fees. So the Canadian government paid 1.62 billion Canadian dollar reparations in 2016. It formally apologized for the harm caused to First Nation student residential school in 2008. IRSSA is an ethical principle that exposed that many horrific conditions experienced by First Nation students in Canadian residential schools, which exposed the country's vulnerable majority. Therefore, IRSSA was intended to defend First Nation rights and was used in police ethics. Police have fulfilled their role in dispensing payment fairly and legally, curbing explanations, and providing a safe, non-discriminatory society for First Nations students in Canada. So now we're gonna talk about the First Nation education funding controversy and the importance of the language. As we know, it's important to preserve the language of Canadian Indigenous people in order to preserve the Indigenous culture and heritage of the nation. But along with development, we see that most Indigenous languages are in danger due to the Canadian residential school policy during colonialism, which led to the spots of English and extension of Indigenous languages. But with the existence of law protecting Indigenous languages, such as Inuit language in federal law, and concerning Indigenous language right, the police have also helped protect the rights of Indigenous people by enforcing language laws and refraining from discriminating against Indigenous peoples from speak their traditional languages. In addition to preserving the culture and heritage of the Indigenous people of Canada. So, the extension of Indigenous languages is occurring at a rate enforcement according at a statistic which is the Canadian government has promoted from Indigenous peoples. A three-quarting of Indigenous languages in the country are affecting extinction. It is reporting by UNESCO that the language that every fortnight at the a three of all languages have wrote that 1,000 of speakers. So Canadian residential schools has also had a central role in enlightening children from their Indigenous language by punishing them for not being allowed to use the mother language at a school and compelling them to focus on English. This has been continuous for punting and has led them to lose Indigenous languages. Electronic media such as First Voice has also been employed for recording and the education of Indigenous languages. So too has policy such as the 2008 Nunavut Inuit Language Protection Act. So now we're going to talk about First Nation education funding debate. Aboriginal people have enduring education issues for a long time, such as shorting of Aboriginal education funding in Canada. This is evidence of quality, leading to a low secondary school graduation for Aboriginal people. This is beside economic challenges caused by a narrowing federal funding. Federal funding raises by less than 2%, which is minimum. The graduation rate for a First Nation student is just 35%, coming to non-Indigenous student at 78%.